The wrench slipped from Ben Walsh's hand and clattered against the metal floor. He had been working on the same cooling unit for 3 hours, and his back ached from bending over the broken machinery. The repair shop felt emptier than usual tonight. Most of the station's residents were at the market district, celebrating some festival Ben couldn't remember the name of. He wiped grease from his fingers and glanced at the time display on his workbench. Nearly midnight. Time to close up and head back to his small quarters. Ben had learned long ago that keeping to himself was easier than making friends on Outpost Station Harlow. Humans were still relatively new to the Coalition, and most alien species treated them like curious children, or ignored them completely. That suited Ben just fine. He had his work, his tools, and his quiet corner of the station. Nothing more, nothing less. As he gathered his equipment, a sound echoed from the maintenance corridor outside, a scraping noise like something heavy being dragged across metal. Ben paused. The corridor led to the waste processing units and the cargo bay. Nobody went down there at night unless they were up to something they shouldn't be. Ben grabbed a plasma torch from his bench. Not much of a weapon, but it made him feel better. He moved to the workshop door and pressed the control panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by emergency lights. The scraping sound had stopped. Ben stepped out, his boots making soft thuds against the grated floor. He could smell something strange in the air. Burned metal mixed with something organic, almost like charred meat. Then he saw her. A massive form lay crumpled against the wall about 20 meters ahead. Even from this distance, Ben could see the distinctive scales that covered the body. Dravine. The dragon-like aliens were famous throughout Coalition space. Warriors, diplomats, and traders. They stood nearly 3 meters tall and were strong enough to bend steel with their bare hands. Most species gave them a wide berth out of respect and fear. This one wasn't moving. Ben's first instinct was to turn around and call station security. Getting involved with a Dravine, especially one who appeared injured or dead, was asking for trouble. The Dravine had strict honor codes and customs that Ben didn't understand. Touching one without permission could be considered an insult worthy of death. But then he saw the blood. Dark purple blood pooled beneath the massive body, spreading slowly across the floor. The Dravine's chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. Ben's feet moved before his brain could stop them. His sister's face flashed through his mind. Amy had died 12 years ago because nobody would help her. A simple accident on a transport ship, and the crew had been too afraid of breaking some regulation to treat her injuries. By the time they reached a proper medical facility, it was too late. He knelt beside the Dravine and saw the extent of the damage. Energy weapon burns covered her torso and left arm. The scales in those areas had turned black and cracked, exposing the raw flesh beneath. Her breathing was getting weaker. "Can you hear me?" Ben asked, knowing his voice probably sounded tiny to someone so large. The Dravine's eyes flickered open. They were gold, like molten metal, and filled with pain. Her lips pulled back, revealing teeth as long as Ben's fingers. "Human," she rasped. "Leave, not your concern." "You're bleeding out," Ben said. He could see more wounds now, some still smoking from recent weapon fire. "You need help." "No," the word came out as a growl. "Dishonor. Dravine do not accept aid from lesser species. Ben had heard that phrase before. Most Dravine considered themselves superior to other races. It should have made him angry, but right now all he felt was the urgent need to stop someone from dying in front of him. "Fine," Ben said. "Then I'm not helping you. I'm just dragging some garbage back to my workshop so it doesn't clutter up the corridor." Before the Dravine could protest, Ben grabbed her arm. Even injured and weakened, she probably weighed twice what he did. He pulled with all his strength, managing to move her a few centimeters. This was going to take a while. The Dravine made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. "Stubborn creature?" "Yeah, we humans are known for that," Ben grunted, pulling again. It took nearly 20 minutes to drag her into the workshop. Ben's muscles screamed in protest and sweat poured down his face. The Dravine had passed out halfway through, which made things both easier and more terrifying. If she died, her people would probably blame him. He sealed the workshop door and dimmed the lights. Then he stood over the unconscious alien and realized he had absolutely no idea how to treat Dravine injuries. Their biology was completely different from humans. For all he knew, standard medical supplies might poison her, but he had to try something. Ben pulled up his datapad and searched for information on Dravine physiology. Most of it was classified or restricted, but he found a few basic facts. Dravine body temperature ran hot, much hotter than humans. Their scales acted as both armor and a heat regulation system. When the scales were damaged, their core temperature could spike dangerously high. That explained why her skin felt like it was burning even through his gloves. Ben looked around his workshop. He had coolant systems for machinery, industrial-grade thermal paste, cryofoam used for welding applications. None of it was meant for medical use, but it might work. He got to work knowing that somewhere on this station, someone was probably looking for this wounded Dravine. And when they found out a human had hidden her, there would be consequences. But Ben had stopped caring about consequences the moment he saw her bleeding on that corridor floor. Ben's workshop had transformed into something that barely resembled a repair bay anymore. Tools and spare parts had been shoved aside to make room for the massive Dravine lying on the floor. He had managed to prop her upper body against a stack of cargo containers, giving him better access to her wounds. The thermal paste was working, sort of. He had applied thick layers to the burned areas, and her skin temperature had dropped from dangerously high to merely concerning. But the wounds themselves looked worse in the bright work lights. The energy burns had penetrated deep, damaging muscle tissue beneath the scales. Ben cleaned each wound as carefully as he could, using industrial solvent that probably burned like acid. The Dravine remained unconscious, though occasionally her clawed hands would twitch and her breathing would hitch. He had just finished wrapping her torso with metallic cooling sheets when her eyes opened, those golden eyes fixed on him, with an intensity that made Ben freeze. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the Dravine tried to sit up, gasped in pain, and fell back against the containers. "Easy," Ben said, holding up his hands. "You're still hurt pretty bad. Where am I?" Her voice was stronger now, though still rough. "My workshop. Level 7, maintenance sector. You've been out for about 2 hours." The Dravine looked down at herself at the improvised bandages and cooling systems Ben had rigged around her body. Her expression was hard to read, but Ben thought he saw surprise there. "You treated my wounds." "Tried to," Ben corrected. "I'm a mechanic, not a doctor. But you were dying, so I did what I could. Why?" It was such a simple question, but Ben didn't have a simple answer. Why had he helped? Because his sister died when no one would? Because leaving someone to bleed out felt wrong? Because he was an idiot who couldn't mind his own business? "Seemed like the right thing to do," he finally said. The Dravine studied him for a long moment. "I am Cirith of the Golden Wind clan. You have placed yourself in great danger by helping me, human. Ben Walsh. And yeah, I kind of figured that part out." He sat down on a nearby stool, suddenly feeling exhausted. "Want to tell me who shot you?" Cirith's expression darkened. "Assassins. From my own people." That made Ben sit up straighter. "Your own people are trying to kill you?" "It is complicated." Cirith shifted, trying to find a more comfortable position. Each movement clearly caused her pain. "I discovered something I was not supposed to know. Information about weapons deals and corruption in the High Command. They sent hunters to silence me before I could reveal it." Ben felt his stomach drop. This was worse than he thought. Political assassination meant that whoever was after Cirith had resources and connections. They wouldn't stop just because she had escaped once. "How many assassins?" he asked. "I killed one. 3 more pursued me through the station." Cirith's claws scraped against the metal floor. "They are still hunting. It is only a matter of time before they find me here." Ben stood and walked to his workbench, pulling up the station security network on his datapad. He had basic access, enough to see public areas and alert logs. What he saw made his blood run cold. Station security had issued a priority alert. They were searching for a wounded Dravine, supposedly for medical assistance. The alert claimed Cirith was delirious and dangerous. Anyone who found her was ordered to report her location immediately and maintain distance. "They're using station security to find you," Ben said. "There's an alert out. They're saying you're dangerous and need medical help." Cirith's laugh was bitter. "Clever. If security finds me first, the assassins can claim they were trying to help when they finish what they started." Ben paced across the small workshop, his mind racing. He couldn't keep Cirith hidden forever. Someone would eventually search this sector. The workshop wasn't registered as living quarters, so he had no privacy rights. Security could walk in any time they wanted. There has to be somewhere safer. he muttered. Somewhere they wouldn't think to look. There is nowhere safe on this station, Cirith said quietly. Not for me. Perhaps not for you anymore either. By helping me, you have become a target as well. That thought had occurred to Ben, but hearing it said out loud made it real. He was now involved in whatever conspiracy had put a target on Cirith's back. If the people hunting her were willing to kill a Dravine warrior, they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate a human mechanic. A sound from outside made them both freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving through the maintenance corridor. Ben quickly dimmed the lights and moved to the door panel, checking the external camera feed. 4 figures stood in the corridor. 3 Dravine and 1 human in a station security uniform. Ben recognized the human immediately. Captain Reed, head of station security. The Dravine with him were scanning with handheld devices, probably looking for thermal signatures or life signs. Security is outside, Ben whispered, with 3 Dravine. Cirith tried to stand but collapsed back down. She was still too weak. The Dravine are not security. They are the hunters. If they enter, we both die. Ben's mind raced. The workshop door would open to any security override. He had maybe seconds before Captain Reed decided to check inside. His eyes fell on the cooling system he had been repairing earlier. The massive unit ran the length of one wall, with pipes and vents connecting to the station's main environmental controls. Can you move at all? He asked Cirith. Barely. That'll have to be enough. Ben helped her to her feet, supporting as much of her weight as he could. They moved toward the back of the workshop where a maintenance hatch led into the cooling system's access space. It was a tight fit even for Ben. For Cirith, it would be torture, but it was the only hiding spot that might fool a thermal scan. The cooling pipes would mask her heat signature. They had just closed the hatch when the workshop door opened. Ben turned, trying to look casual despite his racing heart and sweat-soaked shirt. Captain Reed stepped inside, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. Ben Walsh, working late tonight? Cooling unit won't fix itself, Ben said, gesturing at the machinery. What's going on? We're looking for someone. A Dravine female, wounded. Have you seen anything unusual? Ben shook his head. Been in here all night. Haven't seen anyone. One of the Dravine hunters moved deeper into the workshop, his scanning device sweeping across the room. He was even larger than Cirith, with scales that looked like polished bronze. His eyes were cold and calculating. This human's thermal signature is elevated, the hunter said. He has been exerting himself recently. I've been hauling heavy equipment, Ben said, which was technically true. It's physical work. The hunter moved closer, studying Ben with obvious suspicion. For a terrifying moment, Ben thought the hunter could somehow sense that Cirith was hidden nearby. But then the scanner beeped, apparently satisfied that only one life form occupied the workshop. Captain Reed looked around one more time. If you see anything, report it immediately. The Dravine we're looking for is dangerous. She's not thinking clearly due to her injuries. Sure thing, Captain, Ben said. After they left, Ben waited a full 5 minutes before opening the maintenance hatch. Cirith crawled out, her face tight with pain. The cramped space had aggravated her injuries. That was close, Ben said. Too close. They will return. Cirith lowered herself back to the floor, breathing heavily. You should turn me in. Save yourself. Not happening, Ben said firmly. We'll figure something out. Why? Cirith asked again. Why risk everything for someone you do not know? Ben thought about his sister again. About all the times he had wished someone would have just done the right thing, regardless of the cost. Because someone should, he said simply. Cirith's fever broke sometime around dawn. Ben had stayed awake the entire night, monitoring her condition and jumping at every sound from the corridor. Now, as artificial daylight began filtering through the workshop's small window, she seemed more alert and aware. She sat propped against the wall, drinking water from a container Ben had given her. Dravine didn't need as much water as humans, but the burns had dehydrated her badly. Tell me about this information you found, Ben said. He was checking the station news feeds on his data pad, looking for any mention of the incident. So far, nothing. The whole thing was being kept quiet. Cirith set down the water container. For the past year, I served as an intelligence officer in the Dravine military. My assignment was to monitor weapons shipments and ensure they went to approved buyers only. Let me guess, Ben said. Someone was selling to unapproved buyers. Worse than that, high-ranking officials in the Dravine command were selling advanced military technology to known hostile factions. Groups that have attacked coalition worlds. Groups responsible for killing thousands of innocent beings. Ben felt sick. The coalition had been fighting a series of small conflicts along its borders for years. Pirate raiders with unexpectedly advanced weapons. Terrorist cells with military-grade explosives. If someone inside the coalition was supplying these groups, it explained a lot. "You have proof?" he asked. Cirith reached into a pouch on her belt, one of the few items that had survived the attack. She pulled out a small data chip. "Everything is here. Transaction records, communication logs, shipping manifests, enough to bring down dozens of high-ranking officials across multiple species." Multiple species. Ben took the chip carefully. "This isn't just a Dravine problem?" "No. The conspiracy involves Dravine, Centauri, even some human officials in the outer colonies. It goes deeper than I initially realized." Cirith's expression was grim. "That is why they want me dead. I know too much." Ben turned the chip over in his hands. Such a tiny thing, barely bigger than his thumbnail, but it contained information that could reshape galactic politics, and people were willing to kill to keep it secret. "We need to get this information out," he said. "Make it public. If enough people know, they can't cover it up." "How?" "We are trapped on this station. The moment we try to send a transmission, they will detect it and trace the source. We would be dead before the message finished sending." Ben thought about that. She was right. The station's communication systems were monitored. Any outgoing message flagged as sensitive would be intercepted. But there had to be a way. "Wait here," he said, standing up. "I need to check something." He moved to his workbench and pulled up the station's technical schematics on his main computer. Ben had always been good with systems and networks. It was what made him a decent mechanic. He understood how things connected and communicated. The station's communication array was powerful, designed to reach ships across several star systems. But it was also heavily regulated and monitored. Every message went through security filters and could be traced back to its source, unless you bypassed the filters entirely. Ben zoomed in on the array's technical specifications. The security systems were sophisticated but designed to catch unauthorized transmissions from personal devices. They weren't designed to stop someone who had physical access to the array itself. "I have an idea," he said slowly, "but it's risky." "Really risky?" Cirith struggled to her feet, moving more easily now that the worst of her injuries had stabilized. "Tell me." "The communication array is on level 3. If we can reach it, I can physically modify the system to bypass all security filters. We could broadcast your data to every coalition world simultaneously. They couldn't stop it or trace it back to us in time. Level 3 is a high security zone," Cirith pointed out. "We would never reach it without being seen. Not through normal corridors, no. But the maintenance shafts run through the whole station. I've used them before for repairs. They're cramped and uncomfortable, but they connect to every level." Cirith looked at the ceiling where a maintenance access hatch was barely visible. "In my current condition, climbing through narrow shafts will be difficult. Can you do it?" She met his eyes. "I will do it. This information must reach the public. Too many lives depend on it." Ben started gathering supplies. His toolkit, a portable power source, and some emergency rations. He also grabbed a plasma cutter, the closest thing to a weapon he owned. If they ran into the hunters, the cutter wouldn't be much use against trained assassins, but it was better than nothing. Before they left, Ben erased his computer's activity logs and set up a timer to wipe the entire system in 6 hours. If someone checked his workshop after they were gone, they would find nothing useful. The maintenance hatch opened with a loud squeal that made Ben wince. The shaft beyond was dark and narrow, with barely enough room for a person to crawl through. For Cirith, it would be extremely tight. "After you," Ben said. They climbed into the shaft, Ben going first to light the way with a handheld work light. The space was even more cramped than he remembered. Behind him, Cirith moved slowly, her injured body scraping against the metal walls. She didn't complain, but Ben could hear her labored breathing. The maintenance shafts formed a maze throughout the station. Ben navigated by memory and the faded markings on the shaft walls. They crawled for what felt like hours, though his datapad showed only 40 minutes had passed. They were halfway to level 3 when Ben heard voices below them. He froze, signaling Cirith to stop. Through a ventilation grate, he could see a corridor. 2 Dravine stood there talking in low voices. "The hunters. The human mechanic is lying," one said. "I could smell the female's blood in his workshop." She was there recently. Then we watch him, the other replied. He will lead us to her eventually. Ben's heart hammered in his chest. They knew. They hadn't believed his story, which meant the workshop wasn't safe anymore, and they would be looking for him. He waited until the hunters moved on, then continued forward. They had to reach the communication array now. There was no going back. Level 3 was quiet when they finally emerged from the shafts. This section of the station housed critical systems and was usually staffed by only a skeleton crew. Ben had been here once before to repair a faulty power relay. He remembered the layout. The communication array occupied a large room at the end of a long corridor. Ben could see the door from their position, and more importantly, he could see that no guards were posted outside. They were still treating this as a simple search for a wounded Dravine, not a major security incident. That would change very soon. Ready? Ben whispered. Cirith nodded, her hand resting on a curved blade she had been carrying. Ben hadn't noticed the weapon before. It looked ceremonial, with an ornate handle and a blade that gleamed like silver. They moved quickly down the corridor, trying to look purposeful rather than suspicious. Ben used his maintenance credentials to open the communication array door. It worked, the panel flashing green. Inside, the room was filled with servers and broadcast equipment. Holographic displays showed communication traffic flowing in and out of the station. It was beautiful and complex, and Ben had maybe 10 minutes to hack it before someone noticed what he was doing. Keep watch, he told Cirith, and got to work. His fingers flew across the control interfaces. He bypassed security protocols, rerouted power feeds, and modified broadcast parameters. The system fought him at every step, but Ben had dealt with stubborn machinery his entire life. This was just another puzzle to solve. Cirith inserted her data chip into the array's main input port. The file is ready. Just initiate the broadcast. Ben's finger hovered over the final command. Once he pressed it, there was no going back. Every coalition world would receive Cirith's evidence. Governments would collapse. People would be arrested, and somewhere on this station, the conspirators would know exactly who had exposed them. He pressed the command. Alarms immediately began blaring throughout the station. The broadcast went out like a wave across coalition space. Ben watched the holographic displays as the data stream split into thousands of separate transmissions, each one targeting a different world, news agency, and government office. Within seconds, Cirith's evidence was spreading faster than anyone could stop it. But they could certainly try. The communication array's door exploded inward. Ben threw himself behind a server bank as debris rained across the room. Through the smoke, he saw 3 figures entering. The Dravine hunters moving with deadly purpose. You have made a grave mistake, human, one of them growled. His scales were dark red, almost black. Burn scars covered his arms and neck, marking him as a veteran warrior. Cirith stepped forward, placing herself between Ben and the hunters. Despite her injuries, she stood tall, her blade held ready. He made the right choice. Something you abandoned long ago, Gareth. The scarred hunter's eyes narrowed. Cirith, I taught you how to fight, how to honor the clan, and this is how you repay that teaching? By betraying your own people? I betrayed no one. I exposed traitors who sold weapons to our enemies. Cirith's voice was steady despite the obvious pain she was in. You are the betrayer, Gareth. You and everyone who took blood money while coalition citizens died. We took opportunity, another hunter said. This one was female, smaller but somehow more dangerous looking. The weak die, the strong profit. That is the way of things. Not anymore, Ben said, standing up from behind the servers. His legs felt shaky, but he forced himself to stay upright. That data is everywhere now. In a few hours, everyone in the coalition will know what you did. You can kill us, but you can't stop what's already started. Gareth's laugh was cold. Perhaps. But killing you will be satisfying nonetheless. He lunged forward with shocking speed. Cirith met his attack, her blade clashing against his claws. The impact sent sparks flying. They moved like lightning, each strike fast enough that Ben could barely track the motion. The other 2 hunters split up, one going after Cirith's exposed side while the other came straight for Ben. Ben grabbed his plasma cutter and activated it. The tool whined to life, its cutting beam glowing blue-white. The hunter approaching him laughed. You think that toy will stop me, human? No, Ben admitted. But it might slow you down. He didn't try to fight the hunter directly. That would be suicide. Instead, he sliced through the support cables holding up a massive relay antenna. The heavy equipment crashed down, forcing the hunter to dodge backward. Ben used those precious seconds to run. The layout of the communication array was complex, with server banks and equipment creating a maze of corridors and dead ends. Ben knew the technical schematics by heart. The hunters didn't. He led his pursuer on a winding chase through the equipment, staying just ahead of those deadly claws. Behind him, he could hear the ongoing fight between Cyrith and Gareth. Metal rang against metal. Something exploded in a shower of sparks. Ben's hunter was getting frustrated. "Stop running, coward!" "Yeah, that's not really my style," Ben shouted back. He ducked under a low-hanging cable conduit and came out near the room's main power junction. This was what he had been aiming for. The power junction controlled electricity flow to the entire communication array. It was protected by safety interlocks and emergency cutoffs. Ben overrode them all with a few commands on his datapad, then cranked the power output to maximum. "You might want to step back," he warned the hunter. The hunter didn't listen. He charged forward just as the power junction overloaded. Electricity arced across the room in brilliant blue bolts. The hunter screamed and convulsed as thousands of volts coursed through his body. He collapsed, smoke rising from his scales. Ben didn't wait to see if the hunter would get back up. He ran back toward Cyrith, arriving just in time to see her take a serious hit. Gareth's claws raked across her side, tearing through the bandages Ben had applied earlier. Blood sprayed across the floor. Cyrith staggered but stayed on her feet. "Ben, leave. I will hold them here." "Not happening," Ben said. He looked at the broadcast equipment, at the data stream still flowing out to the galaxy. An idea formed in his mind. A desperate, probably stupid idea. "Cyrith, how much do you weigh?" She gave him a confused look even as she blocked another attack from Gareth. "What? Just answer." "Approximately 300 kilograms. Why?" Ben ran to the broadcast array's main antenna control. The antenna itself was mounted on the station's outer hull, a massive dish capable of transmitting across star systems. It was also connected to a powerful motorized mount that could rotate and adjust its position. If he overloaded that motor, reversed its polarity, and disabled the safety limits, the antenna would tear itself free from the hull. The resulting decompression would vent this entire section of the station into space. "Cyrith, can you get to the door in 10 seconds? She looked at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Yes, then move." Ben started the override sequence. Alarms blared even louder as the system detected what he was doing. Gareth and the remaining hunter realized something was wrong, but too late. Ben initiated the final command and ran. Cyrith was already at the door, holding it open. The hunters tried to follow, but the antenna mount began tearing free with a deafening shriek of metal. The hull breached, and suddenly the room was a howling tunnel of escaping air. Ben felt himself being pulled backward toward the breach. He grabbed onto a door frame, his fingers slipping. Cyrith's hand clamped around his wrist like a vice. She pulled him through the doorway and slammed the emergency seal button. The door shut just as the entire communication array section depressurized. Through the small window, Ben could see equipment and debris being sucked out into space. And somewhere in that chaos, 2 hunters who would never threaten anyone again. Ben and Cyrith collapsed against the corridor wall, both breathing heavily. His arms felt like rubber and his ears were ringing from the noise. "That was insane," Cyrith said. "Yeah," Ben agreed. But it worked. Alarms continued blaring throughout the station. Security forces would be converging on this location any minute. They needed to move, but Ben didn't know where they could go. The station wasn't that big. Eventually they would be found. A voice crackled over the corridor's intercom system. "Ben Walsh, Cyrith of the Golden Wind clan. This is Counselor Vrain. I know you can hear me." Ben and Cyrith exchanged glances. Counselor Vrain was the Dravine diplomatic representative on the station. Ben had seen her a few times from a distance, always surrounded by guards and assistants. "Your broadcast has been received across Coalition space," Vrain's voice continued. "The damage you have caused cannot be undone. However, I'm prepared to offer you safe passage off this station if you surrender immediately." "It's a trap," Cyrith said quietly. "Vrain was one of the officials named in my evidence. She has been profiting from the weapon sales. So she wants to kill us before someone can question us about the data," Ben concluded. "Precisely." They heard footsteps approaching from both directions. Heavy boots and the distinctive scraping of Dravine claws on metal. They were surrounded. Ben looked at Cyrith's injuries. She was still losing blood, and the fight with Gareth had exhausted what little strength she had left. They couldn't run anymore. They couldn't fight. But maybe they didn't have to. I need to make a call, Ben said, pulling out his datapad. Lyra answered on the third ring. Her blue face appeared on Ben's datapad screen, her expression annoyed. Ben, do you have any idea what time it is? I need a favor, Ben said quickly. A big one. Lyra was a Centauri information broker who operated out of the station's lower markets. Ben had fixed her data servers once after a power surge, and they had stayed in touch. She dealt in information, both legal and otherwise, and she had connections that reached far beyond Outpost Station Harlow. I'm watching the news right now, Lyra said. Something about leaked military documents and a massive corruption scandal. Ben, please tell me you're not involved in that. I'm very involved in that. And there are people trying to kill me because of it. Lyra's eyes widened. Where are you? Level 3 outside the communication array. We're surrounded. I need you to do something for me. We? Who's with you? The Dravine who leaked the documents. Her name is Cirith. Ben glanced at Cirith, who was listening while keeping watch on the corridor. Lyra, the people who are after us include Counselor Vrain. She's trying to cover up her involvement. Vrain? Lyra's expression turned serious. Ben, if you're accusing a coalition counselor of, I have proof. It's all in the broadcast. But Vrain is going to kill us before anyone can verify it. Ben could hear the footsteps getting closer. I need you to spread the word. Tell everyone on this station what's happening. Make it impossible for Vrain to make us disappear quietly. Lyra was quiet for a moment. You're asking me to start a riot. I'm asking you to shine a light on something that needs to be seen. Ben checked his datapad. The broadcast was still spreading across Coalition space. News agencies were already picking up the story. Please, Lyra, I wouldn't ask if there was another way. Lyra sighed. You're going to owe me so many favors. Stay alive, Ben. The call ended. Ben tucked the datapad away and looked at Cirith. Now we wait and hope she comes through. You trust this Centauri? Cirith asked. With my life, apparently. They didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes later, Ben's datapad began buzzing with incoming messages. Then the corridor's intercom crackled to life with a station-wide announcement. Attention all residents of Outpost Station Harlow. This is an emergency broadcast. Counselor Vrain is currently attempting to silence witnesses to a corruption scandal. Ben Walsh and Cirith of the Golden Wind clan are being hunted by Vrain's forces. They are not criminals. They are whistleblowers who exposed illegal weapons trafficking by coalition officials. Lyra's voice rang through every corridor and chamber of the station. She was using the emergency broadcast system, something only senior station personnel should have access to. Ben smiled. Good old Lyra and her hacking skills. If you believe in transparency and justice, make your way to level 3. Do not let these witnesses be silenced. Record everything you see. Spread the word. The footsteps in the corridor stopped. Ben heard confused voices, then the sound of people arguing. The element of surprise was gone. Vrain's forces couldn't simply kill them quietly anymore, not with the entire station listening. Cirith leaned against the wall, her breathing labored. Your friend is clever. She's the best, Ben agreed. He pressed his hand against Cirith's latest wound, trying to slow the bleeding. Stay with me. Help is coming. You do not know that. I know that killing us just got a lot more complicated for Vrain. People began arriving on level 3. Station residents, curious about the broadcast, merchants, workers, even some security personnel who looked confused about what was happening. They filled the corridor, some recording with their datapads, others just watching. Counselor Vrain appeared through the crowd, flanked by a dozen armed guards. She was tall even for a Dravine, with silver scales that marked her as old and respected. Her eyes found Ben and Cirith, and the hatred there was almost physical. Clear this corridor, Vrain ordered. These two are wanted for crimes against the Coalition. What crimes? Someone in the crowd shouted. Theft of classified information, destruction of station property, assault. Vrain's voice was calm and authoritative. They are dangerous and must be taken into custody immediately. She's lying, Ben called out. He stood up, his hands raised to show he wasn't armed. The data we broadcast proves that Counselor Vrain has been selling weapons to terrorist groups. She's profited from the deaths of thousands of Coalition citizens. Ridiculous accusations from a desperate criminal, Vrain said, but Ben saw doubt in some of the faces around her. The crowd was listening. If I'm lying, then let independent investigators examine the evidence, Ben challenged. Let a real court decide. But you won't do that, will you? Because you know what they'll find. Brain's expression hardened. Arrest them both. The guards moved forward. The crowd pressed closer, not attacking but not giving way either. Hundreds of people with their recording devices out, documenting everything. This was being broadcast live to news agencies and social networks across the station and beyond. Vrain couldn't massacre a crowd of witnesses on camera, but she could still grab Ben and Cirith in the confusion and make them disappear later. Then someone unexpected stepped through the crowd. Captain Reed, the security chief who had searched Ben's workshop. He moved to stand between the guards and Ben. "Counselor, I'm going to need you to stand down," Reed said quietly. "Captain, these criminals are under Coalition protection as whistleblowers," Reed interrupted. "I just received orders from Coalition Command. The evidence they broadcast is being treated as credible. There's an investigation team en route to this station. Until they arrive, nobody touches these two." Vrain's scales seemed to pale. "You're making a mistake, Captain." "Maybe. But it's the mistake I'm comfortable making." Reed looked at Ben and Cirith. "You two need medical attention. I'm taking you to the station infirmary under protective custody." "You can't," Vrain started. "I can and I will," Reed said firmly, "unless you want to try stopping me in front of all these witnesses and cameras." Vrain looked around at the crowd, at the dozens of recording devices pointed at her. She was trapped. Anything she did now would be seen by millions across Coalition space. Her political career was already over, but she could still avoid criminal prosecution if she played this carefully. She stepped aside. Reed helped Cirith to her feet. Two medical personnel appeared with a stretcher, but Cirith refused it. She walked, limping but upright, through the crowd. Ben stayed close beside her, watching for any sign of threat. The crowd parted for them. As they passed, Ben heard whispers. Not all friendly, but not hostile either. Curious, surprised. The human mechanic who had stood up to a coalition counselor. The Dravine warrior who had exposed corruption in her own government. They were halfway to the infirmary when Cirith stumbled. Ben caught her, taking as much of her weight as he could. She was barely conscious now, blood loss and exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Almost there," Ben said. "Just a little further." They reached the infirmary where doctors were already waiting. Cirith was taken to an emergency treatment room. Ben tried to follow, but a nurse stopped him. "Let them work," she said gently. "You've done enough." Ben sank into a chair in the waiting area, his whole body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline crash. His clothes were covered in Cirith's blood. His hands shook so badly he couldn't hold his datapad steady. Captain Reed sat down beside him. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Probably both," Ben admitted. "The Coalition investigators will want to interview you when they arrive. Be prepared for a lot of questions. I'll answer whatever they want to know." Reed was quiet for a moment. "Why did you do it?" "You could have walked away. Reported the wounded Dravine and let security handle it. Instead, you risked everything." Ben thought about his sister, about all the people who had walked away when she needed help, about the kind of person he wanted to be. "Because someone had to," he said simply. They sat in silence, waiting for news about Cirith. Outside the infirmary, the station buzzed with activity. News agencies were descending on Outpost Station Harlow. The story was spreading across Coalition space. Two individuals against a massive conspiracy. A human mechanic and a Dravine warrior who refused to be silenced. In a few hours, everything would change. But right now, Ben just wanted to know if Cirith would survive. The treatment room door opened. A doctor emerged, looking tired but satisfied. "She's stable. The surgery went well. She'll need time to recover, but she should make a full recovery." Ben felt something release in his chest, relief so strong it was almost painful. "Can I see her?" "Not yet. She needs rest." The doctor smiled slightly. "But she asked about you, wanted to make sure you were safe." Ben nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He had done it. Against all odds, they had both survived. 3 weeks had passed since the broadcast that changed everything. Ben stood outside the station infirmary, holding a container of food that Lyra had insisted he bring. Apparently, Dravine recovery patients needed specific nutrients that the station's medical facility didn't normally stock. Lyra had somehow acquired them anyway. The door opened before Ben could knock. Cirith stood there, looking healthier than Ben had seen her since that first night in the corridor. Her scales had regained their natural golden sheen, and the wounds that had nearly killed her were now pink scars beneath new scale growth. "You did not have to bring food," Sirith said. "But she took the container anyway," Lyra insisted. "Something about proper healing requiring proper nutrition." Ben stepped inside the private recovery room. It was small but comfortable, better than the standard infirmary beds. Coalition Command had arranged it after investigators confirmed Sirith's evidence. Sirith opened the container and made an approving sound. "Lyra understands Dravine dietary needs better than most doctors here. She understands most things better than most people," Ben said with a smile. He sat in the visitor's chair while Sirith settled back onto her bed. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. Coalition investigators had arrived within 24 hours of the broadcast. They had interviewed Ben and Sirith for days, going over every detail of the evidence. The data Sirith had collected proved to be even more damaging than anyone expected. Not just weapons trafficking, but embezzlement, bribery, and conspiracy across multiple governments. Arrests had been made across coalition space. High-ranking officials dragged from their offices. Military officers stripped of their commissions. Councillor Vrain was currently awaiting trial on over 30 criminal charges. The scandal had shaken the coalition to its foundations, and somehow Ben had become famous for it. "I saw your interview this morning," Sirith said between bites. "You looked uncomfortable." "I hate interviews," Ben admitted. "They keep calling me a hero. I'm just a mechanic who made a choice that most would not have made." Sirith set down the food container. "You risked your life for someone you did not know, a member of a species that has treated humans with disdain. That is the definition of heroism. I think the definition of heroism is what you did, exposing corruption even though you knew it would make you a target." Ben shook his head. "All I did was refuse to let someone bleed to death." "All you did?" Sirith repeated softly. She reached out and placed her hand over Ben's. Her palm was warm, almost hot, and her scales felt surprisingly smooth. "Ben Walsh, you saved my life multiple times. You treated my wounds. You hid me from hunters. You helped me broadcast evidence that would have died with me. You created a situation where killing me became politically impossible, and you did all of this expecting nothing in return. What else was I supposed to do? Walk away, as thousands of others have done in similar circumstances." Sirith's golden eyes held his. "But you are human, and I am beginning to understand that humans are different in ways that matter." There was a knock at the door. Captain Reed entered, looking official in his full uniform. "Sorry to interrupt. Ben, there's someone here to see you." Ben frowned. "Who?" "High Chancellor Duvak of the Dravine Council. He's in the station's main conference room." Ben felt his stomach drop. The High Chancellor was the leader of the entire Dravine government. What could he possibly want with a mechanic? Sirith stood immediately. "I will accompany you." "You should rest," Ben protested. "The High Chancellor is here to meet both of us," Sirith said firmly. "I am well enough to walk to a conference room." They made their way through the station together. Word had spread that the High Chancellor was on board, and crowds gathered to watch their small group pass. Ben saw aliens of a dozen species all staring at him and Sirith. Some looked curious. Others looked grateful. A few even bowed as they passed. It was extremely weird. The conference room was heavily guarded by both Dravine warriors and coalition security forces. Inside, High Chancellor Duvak waited. He was ancient by Dravine standards, his scales more silver than gold, his movements careful and deliberate, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Sirith of the Golden Wind clan," Duvak said, his voice deep and resonant. "It has been too long since we spoke." "Chancellor?" Sirith bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect. "I did not expect to see you here. When one of my finest intelligence officers exposes a conspiracy that threatens the entire coalition, I make time." Duvak's gaze shifted to Ben. "And you must be Ben Walsh, the human who started all of this." "I didn't start anything," Ben said. "I just helped someone who needed it." "Precisely." Duvak moved closer, studying Ben with an intensity that made him want to step back. "Do you know what makes your actions remarkable, Ben Walsh? It is not that you helped someone in need. Many species are capable of compassion. It is that you helped someone despite every logical reason not to. You helped a Dravine knowing our reputation. You risked your life, your livelihood, your safety. You gained nothing from this action and potentially lost everything. I gained a friend. Ben said, glancing at Cirith. Duvok made a sound that might have been approval. Yes, a friend. Cirith, you chose well when you trusted this human. I did not choose, Cirith said. He chose me. Despite my protests, which makes it even more significant. Duvok reached into his robes and pulled out a small box. He opened it to reveal a medal of some kind, a star-shaped piece of metal that glowed with an inner light. Ben Walsh, the Dravine Council wishes to honor you with the Star of Courage. It is the highest civilian honor we can bestow. In the 5,000-year history of the Dravine people, it has been awarded only 43 times. You are the first non-Dravine to receive it. Ben stared at the medal. I don't deserve that. You do, more than most who wear it. Duvok placed the medal in Ben's hand. You demonstrated courage, compassion, and integrity when faced with impossible choices. You embodied the best of what any species can be. The weight of the medal was surprising. It was heavier than it looked and warm to the touch. Ben didn't know what to say. Furthermore, Duvok continued, the Dravine Council wishes to formally apologize to humanity. We have treated your species with condescension and disdain. We called you lesser beings, unproven and weak. You, Ben Walsh, have shown us how wrong we were. Strength is not just physical power. It is moral courage. It is doing what is right even when it costs everything. In that regard, humans have strength that we are only beginning to understand. The Chancellor is being diplomatic, Cirith said quietly. What he means is that the Dravine government is terrified. You have changed how the galaxy sees humans. Our people were the warriors, the feared and respected. Now stories are spreading. The human who stood up to a coalition counselor. The human who saved a Dravine's life and exposed a conspiracy. Other species are starting to wonder what else humans are capable of. Duvok nodded. She is correct. Your actions have shifted galactic politics in ways we are still trying to understand. Trade negotiations with human colonies are being reevaluated. Defense treaties are being proposed. The Coalition Council is discussing humanity's role in galactic affairs with new seriousness. Because I helped someone? Ben couldn't believe what he was hearing. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense, Duvok said. For millennia, species have acted according to their own interests. Alliances formed from necessity, not trust. But you acted outside of self-interest. You demonstrated that humans value life and justice above personal safety. That makes humanity unpredictable. Dangerous in a way that military power alone cannot achieve? Ben looked at the medal in his hand, then at Cirith. She smiled, a very human expression that looked strange on her dragon-like features but was warming nonetheless. What happens now? Ben asked. Now you return to your life, Duvok said. Though I suspect your life will never be quite the same. You have become a symbol, Ben Walsh, of what humanity can be, of what all of us should strive to be. The High Chancellor left soon after, taking his guards and entourage with him. Ben and Cirith stood alone in the conference room. So I'm a symbol now, Ben said. That's terrifying. You will adapt, Cirith said. Humans are excellent at adapting. What about you? What's next for you? Cirith was quiet for a moment. The Council has offered me a position in the Reformed Intelligence Division. High-ranking, prestigious, but I am considering declining it. Why? Because I have spent my life serving the Dravine government, following orders, trusting in hierarchy and tradition, and it nearly got me killed. She looked at Ben. You showed me a different way, acting according to conscience rather than duty. I find that appealing. So what will you do instead? Cirith's smile widened. I thought I might stay on this station for a while. There is a repair shop in the maintenance sector that could use a partner. Someone to handle security and manage difficult customers. The owner is stubborn and tends to take on problems that are not his concern, so he needs someone to watch his back. Ben felt warmth spread through his chest. That owner sounds like he could use the help. Then it is decided. Cirith held out her hand. Partners? Ben took her hand. Partners. They walked back through the station together, past the crowds and the cameras and the news reporters who shouted questions. Ben ignored them all. He had work to do, and now he had a partner to help him do it. The workshop was exactly as he had left it, though someone had cleaned up the blood and damage. His tools were still there, arranged neatly on the bench. The cooling unit he had been working on before all of this started still sat in the corner, waiting to be fixed. Ben picked up his wrench and felt something settle in his soul. This was where he belonged, not in conference rooms with chancellors and medals. Here in a small workshop, fixing things that were broken, Sirith moved around the space, examining the equipment with professional interest. We will need more space. My equipment will not fit in here. We can expand into the adjacent storage bay. It's been empty for months. Good. And we should install better security. If more customers come because of your newfound fame, we want to be prepared. They spent the rest of the day planning their partnership, expanding the business, what services to offer, how to handle the inevitable media attention. It felt normal and comfortable, like they had been working together for years instead of weeks. That night, after Sirith had returned to the infirmary for her evening medical check, Ben stood alone in his workshop and thought about everything that had happened. 3 weeks ago, he had been a quiet mechanic who kept to himself. Now he was a symbol of human courage, holder of the Dravine Star of Courage and partner to a legendary warrior. It was absurd. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. But as Ben looked around his workshop at the tools and machines that he understood, at the simple, honest work of fixing things that were broken, he realized something important. He was still just Ben Walsh, still a mechanic, still someone who believed in helping others when they needed it. The galaxy might have changed around him, but he was still himself. And that, more than anything else, gave him peace. The workshop door chimed. Ben checked the security panel and smiled. A customer looking for help with a faulty thruster assembly. He opened the door. "Come on in. Let's see what we can fix."